Just when he thought he gave her enough, Tessa sprung betrayal upon him. The betrayal didn't come in words. It came in as a signal, and that was when he knew that someone else had already logged into his marriage. Before we begin, please subscribe to this channel and put on your notification. The glow of the laptop screen painted the room in shades of blue and white. It was almost midnight, and Dr. Adrian Blackwell sat hunched over his desk, surrounded by silence thick enough to hear his own breathing. Outside, the city pulsed with nightlife, but in his apartment, everything was still, except the dull hum of the router in the corner. For weeks, he'd lived in this strange quiet. Tessa, his wife of 6 years, had grown distant, her laughter softer, her presence fainter. She still lived here, technically, but emotionally she had checked out months ago. Conversations were reduced to routine exchanges about bills, groceries, and their 3-year-old daughter, Maya. Love had been replaced by logistics. Adrian told himself she was stressed from work. Tessa had recently started consulting remotely for a media firm, claiming endless online meetings and networking events. She said the job kept her fulfilled. But deep down, something in Adrian twitched whenever she smiled at her phone too long or slipped out with her laptop for focus. That night, while reviewing patient data for an early morning consultation, his screen flashed a small pop-up. New Wi-Fi network detected, Simone_desk. He frowned. That name again. It had appeared before, 3 times to be exact, usually when Tessa was home but logged in for work. The first time, he'd thought it was a neighbor's router. The second time, coincidence. But now it felt like a whisper taunting him. Adrian's pulse quickened. He wasn't a man ruled by emotion. His training as a surgeon had taught him to separate panic from precision. Still, the unease that prickled at the back of his neck was impossible to ignore. He minimized his files and opened a diagnostics window. His fingers moved fast, activating a network scanner he'd once used during hospital cybersecurity drills. Within seconds, the list appeared, each connected device, each IP address. Most were familiar. His phone, the smart TV, the baby monitor. But one stood out. Device name, Simone_desk signal strength, fluctuating. Connection time, 2:47 a.m. last night. He leaned back, staring. Why would a foreign device be connecting at night when Tessa was supposedly asleep beside him? Adrian began digging deeper, cross-referencing the network log with timestamps. The pattern was unmistakable. Every time Simone_desk appeared, Tessa's work sessions aligned perfectly, same hours, same locations. He remembered the scent that sometimes clung to her clothes, a faint, musky perfume that wasn't hers. The unfamiliar cafe receipts in her purse. The nervous way she locked her phone whenever he walked into the room. Still, he needed proof. Real proof. The next evening, he stayed later at the hospital under the guise of a night shift, then returned home earlier than expected. The apartment was empty. On the coffee table sat Tessa's half-finished law, her laptop open to a blank document. He turned on his phone's tracking app, a tool linked to their shared router, and waited. Within minutes, a signal pinged. Simone_desk active again, less than 200 meters away. He followed the trace, his car weaving through the quiet streets of the district. The coordinates led him to a modern loft building 2 blocks away, a co-working space. Through the glass lobby, he spotted Tessa's figure, shoulders relaxed, head tilted as she laughed. Opposite her sat a man, tall, dark-haired, his hand resting too comfortably on her wrist. Adrian froze. The sight hit harder than any scalpel he'd ever held. He didn't confront her, not yet. His instinct for control held him back. Instead, he pulled out his phone and activated the app he'd installed on their home network months earlier for safety, an advanced monitoring system that paired with GPS-enabled devices. If Tessa's phone connected again to that Wi-Fi, he'd know where, when, and how long. Back home, he poured himself a drink he didn't taste and stared at the screen as the data loaded. The timeline was brutal in its clarity. The first appearance of Simone_desk matched the same day Tessa had started her consulting job. Every ping since then followed her supposed work trips, her coffee catch-ups, her sudden need for privacy. He wanted to believe there was another explanation, but the patterns were too neat, too rehearsed. At 1:15 a.m., The network blinked alive again. Adrian sat up. Another login. He traced the route, from the co-working space, back to their apartment. She had returned. His heart thudded against his ribs as he watched her device reconnect to their home network. When Tessa finally slipped into bed beside him, smelling faintly of smoke and perfume, he kept his eyes closed, breathing steady, pretending to sleep. Inside, he was mapping every piece of data, every lie. By morning, he had made a decision. He would keep collecting evidence until there was no room for denial, not for her and not for himself. Over the next 2 weeks, he quietly installed additional surveillance, hidden network trackers, an upgraded baby monitor with encrypted audio capture, and a remote GPS sync that could trace her car in real time. To anyone else, it would look like an overprotective father checking on his family. To Adrian, it was a diagnostic process, the anatomy of betrayal laid bare. Each night, new pings appeared. Sometimes 2. Sometimes 3. Always the same pattern. Simone understood as connected, lingered for hours, then vanished. And every morning, Tessa smiled like nothing had changed. She kissed Maya's forehead, packed her a snack, promised to call during lunch, and left with her laptop bag swinging at her side. Adrian would watch her go, every step rehearsed, every goodbye feeling thinner than the last. The city stretched beyond the glass walls, indifferent to the unraveling inside apartment 14B. To the world, Adrian Blackwell was a brilliant physician with a promising career. But behind those screens, he was a man dissecting the slow death of his marriage, line by line, signal by signal. He wasn't sure what hurt more, the betrayal itself or the quiet precision with which she hid it. That night, as the clock ticked past midnight and the blue glow returned to his screen, he saw the Wi-Fi flicker again. Simone was connected. Adrian's eyes hardened. He whispered to the empty room, "You've lied long enough, Tessa." Outside, thunder rolled over the city. Inside, a man began charting the end of his marriage, not in tears or confrontation, but in data, code, and unshakable proof. The next morning felt like a hangover, even though Adrian hadn't touched a drop of alcohol. His head was heavy, his chest tight. Tessa moved around the apartment humming softly, her voice too light, too casual. It was the same song she always played when she wanted to seem at ease, the one she'd hum back when they first moved in together, before things got complicated. Adrian sat at the dining table, coffee untouched, eyes on his laptop. On the screen, the activity log blinked. New entries, fresh connections. Simone had stayed connected until 3:14 a.m., long after Tessa had supposedly gone to bed beside him. He didn't look up as she walked past. "Morning, babe," she said, ruffling his hair. He smiled faintly. "Morning. You heading out early?" "Yeah," she said, reaching for her keys. "Client meeting. You'll pick Maya up today, right?" "Of course." Her voice wavered just slightly, just enough for him to catch. But he didn't call her out. He watched her kiss Maya goodbye, then leave, the scent of her perfume lingering in the doorway like a mocking memory. The second the door shut, Adrian turned his chair to face the laptop. His hands trembled, not from anger, but from the slow, deliberate restraint that had been building inside him. He opened the live feed from the upgraded baby monitor. The hidden mic, synced with the router, was sensitive enough to capture conversations in the apartment when he wasn't home. He scrubbed through the last night's recording. At 12:47 a.m., there it was, faint whispers, the sound of a second voice. His heart sank. The voice wasn't entirely clear, but the tone carried, deep, steady, too familiar. And then a laugh. Tessa's laugh, soft but real. He hadn't heard that sound from her in months. He pressed pause. For years, Adrian had treated infidelity like any other diagnosis, something that happened to others, never him. He believed love, once built on trust, could survive distance, silence, even fatigue. But listening to that laughter, that warmth she no longer gave him, made something inside him crack. Still, his logical mind took over. Proof first, reaction later. He copied the clip, encrypted it, and stored it under a coded folder on an external drive. If this was going where he feared it was, emotion wouldn't save him, data would. By noon, he was at the hospital. His colleagues noticed his distraction, but no one asked. Everyone at St. Mark's was too busy, too numb from years of emotional triage. He wore his professionalism like armor, diagnosing patients, discussing treatment plans, smiling when necessary. But beneath it all, his mind kept looping back to one thing. Who was the man in that recording? At 4:23 p.m., a message buzzed his phone. A known number. "You don't know me, but we should talk. It's about your wife." Adrian froze. The text came with an address, a cafe downtown. No name. No details. Just that. His first instinct was suspicion. Scam? Trap? But curiosity, or maybe desperation, won out. An hour later, he was there, sitting in a corner booth, watching the door. A woman entered, tall, striking, in her late 20s. She had sharp eyes that scanned the room before they landed on him. She walked over and sat across from him without asking. "You're Dr. Blackwell?" she asked. "Yes," he said slowly. "And you are?" "Simone." He blinked. Simone. The name that had haunted his Wi-Fi logs for weeks. "I know what you're thinking," she said, her tone calm. "But I'm not her. I'm not the woman your wife's been seeing. I'm the woman he used to see." Adrian frowned. "Who's he?" Simone leaned back. "Nathan Pierce. Your wife's business partner. Or, well, that's what she calls him." The name hit him like cold air. He knew Nathan, at least in passing. The man had attended their anniversary dinner 2 years ago, charming, confident, the type who always stood too close when talking to Tessa. Simone continued. "Nathan and I dated for almost 2 years. We broke up when I found out he was seeing someone else, your wife. I thought she was just another fling, until I saw how serious it got." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because," she said, sliding a flash drive across the table, "I thought you deserved to know how deep it goes." He stared at it but didn't reach for it. "What's on it?" "Screenshots. Calls. Pictures. Even location data. Nathan's been sloppy lately, using my old cloud account for his personal stuff. He must have forgotten I still had access." Adrian exhaled slowly, torn between disbelief and fury. Simone's expression softened. "Look, I'm not doing this out of spite. I moved on. But watching him destroy another person the same way he destroyed me? I couldn't stay quiet." He finally picked up the flash drive. "If you're lying," she smirked faintly, "you're a doctor, right? Verify your own results." That night, Adrian plugged the flash drive into his laptop. The folder opened, revealing timestamps and images. The first photo stopped him cold. Tessa and Nathan, seated side by side in the same co-working space he'd followed her to, her hand resting on his thigh under the table. Another image, the two entering a hotel lobby together. And then, screenshots of messages. "Tessa, I hate lying to him, but he's always watching. You know how he is?" "Nathan, then let him watch. He'll only see what we want him to." Adrian's hand trembled over the mouse. He scrolled further. "Tessa, he's been distant since the miscarriage. Maybe it's my fault. Nathan, no, he's weak. You deserve to be seen." The words twisted inside him like a blade. The miscarriage, the one they'd never recovered from, had been the turning point. He'd blamed himself, buried himself in work, thinking distance would help her heal. But while he was drowning in guilt, she'd found comfort elsewhere. He didn't sleep that night. He watched every file, read every message. By dawn, his rage had turned to something colder, clarity. At 7 a.m., Tessa walked into the kitchen, hair damp, smile faint. "Morning. You're up early." Adrian looked up from his coffee. His voice was calm, almost detached. "We need to talk." She froze mid-step, eyes narrowing. "About what?" He turned the laptop toward her. The photos filled the screen. For a moment, she didn't move. Then her face went pale. "Tessa," he said quietly, "how long?" Silence. The clock ticked. The world outside kept turning, unaware that inside apartment 14B, everything had just broken. Tessa stood frozen, her breath shallow. The sunlight from the kitchen window painted sharp lines across her face, half angel, half liar. "Adrian," she finally whispered, voice trembling. I can explain. He tilted his head slightly, his eyes cold and deliberate. Then explain. For a moment she looked like she might crumble. Then, just as quickly, she straightened, switching into the same defensive composure she used in arguments, that soft, condescending tone she reserved for making him feel unreasonable. "You've been watching me?" she asked, gesturing to the laptop. "Tracking my phone? Do you even hear how insane that sounds?" He didn't flinch. "You were lying to me, and I was done guessing." Tessa laughed, a small, hollow sound. "So you thought spying on me was the solution?" "I thought finding the truth was," he said, voice steady. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You know, you've always had this obsession with control. Even in our marriage. Every schedule, every decision, every move, you had to manage it. Maybe if you trusted me—" He cut her off. "Trusted you?" His tone sharpened. "You think this is about trust? You were sleeping with another man while telling me you were rebuilding our marriage." Her eyes flickered, a momentary break in the mask. Then she sighed, stepping closer. "Adrian, you don't understand. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Nathan was—" "What?" he demanded. "A mistake? A comfort? A distraction?" She hesitated, and that silence, that hesitation, was answer enough. He exhaled slowly, trying to keep his composure. "I saw everything, Tessa. The messages. The pictures. You called me weak." Her eyes widened. "You read those? You left me no choice." She looked away, tears welling up, but Adrian wasn't moved. He'd seen too many rehearsed breakdowns in his own marriage. This one didn't feel different. "I didn't mean it like that," she said finally. "You were so distant, Adrian. After we lost the baby, you shut me out. You built walls I couldn't break. I needed someone to talk to. Someone who wasn't me," he finished quietly. Her voice cracked. "He listened, Adrian. He was there. You were always gone. Emotionally, physically, everything. You buried yourself in your patience while I drowned here alone." For a moment, he almost softened, until he remembered the pictures. The hotel. The lies. He stepped back, his voice low and cold. "You're right. I was gone. But while I was trying to save other people's lives, you were destroying ours." She covered her face, crying quietly. "I didn't want this. I didn't mean to fall for him." Adrian's voice turned sharp. "Then why didn't you stop?" She looked up at him, eyes red. "Because he made me feel seen again." Those words cut deeper than any confession. As if all the nights he stayed up after shifts, cooking for her, holding her through nightmares, meant nothing. He turned away, staring at the half-empty coffee mug on the counter. His reflection in the kitchen window looked older, colder. "You said it wasn't supposed to happen," he said quietly. "So when exactly were you planning to stop? Before or after you left?" Her head snapped up. "What?" He looked at her. "Before or after you disappeared with him?" She froze. "How do you—" "I know about the flights," he said. 2 one-way tickets to Barcelona. Booked under false names. For you and Nathan." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Adrian continued, his tone surgical, emotionless. "You weren't just cheating, Tessa. You were planning to leave the country and leave Maya behind." Her hands shook. "That's not I was." He stepped closer, his presence calm but dangerous. "You were what? Going to abandon your daughter?" She flinched, guilt flooding her face. "I was scared, okay? I didn't know what to do. Nathan said he'd handle everything. He said we could start over." "With what? A lie?" Tessa dropped her gaze. "You think I wanted to be that woman? I didn't. But every time I looked at you, I saw what I'd lost. What we'd lost. And I couldn't breathe anymore." Adrian's voice softened for the first time. "Then you should have told me you wanted out. I would have let you go." She shook her head slowly. "No, you wouldn't have. You don't let go of anything. Not even pain." They stood in silence for a long moment, 2 strangers staring at the wreckage of their marriage. Finally, Tessa whispered, "What are you going to do?" Adrian glanced toward the hallway where their daughter's small shoes sat by the door. "I'm going to protect my child." And I'm going to make sure she never has to grow up watching people destroy each other in the name of love. Tessa's breath hitched. You're taking her? I'm keeping her safe. She shook her head desperately. You can't just, she's my daughter. She's our daughter, he corrected. But you already chose someone else. For the first time, her anger cracked through the guilt. You think you can just erase me from her life? You're not perfect, Adrian. You're cold, detached, you shut me out for months. He didn't argue. He didn't have to. Every accusation she threw had been true once, but not anymore. Instead, he said quietly, maybe I was all those things. But at least I stayed. Her shoulders slumped, tears running freely now. Please don't take her from me. He picked up his jacket, slipping his watch back on. I'm not taking her anywhere. Not yet. But if you step out of this house again under another lie, if I even sense you're planning something, I'll make sure you don't get near her again. Tessa's voice dropped to a whisper. You're threatening me? No, he said simply. I'm warning you. He walked past her, heading toward the bedroom. The air between them felt heavy, charged with everything left unsaid. Tessa stood there, shaking, her mind racing between guilt and fury. But as he disappeared down the hall, something shifted in her expression. The remorse drained away. What replaced it was colder, sharper. She wiped her tears, breathing evenly again. You think you're in control, she whispered to herself, but you have no idea who you're dealing with. Because love wasn't the only secret Tessa had buried. And as Adrian began planning his next move, she quietly reached for her phone and dialed Nathan. Rain drummed against the glass, slow and heavy. The city outside glowed with the kind of stillness that came after emotional storms. Adrian sat in his office, eyes fixed on his computer screen. Patient reports blurred into static. Every heartbeat felt like it echoed against the walls. He wasn't angry anymore. He was calculating. He'd always believed in precision, both in surgery and in life. And betrayal, he realized, required precision to dismantle. He opened a secure drive, typing in a passcode. A folder labeled Contingency blinked to life. Inside were screenshots, call records, and travel bookings, everything he'd gathered since the day he saw that cursed Wi-Fi name. But this wasn't just evidence anymore. It was insurance. Across town, Tessa sat in her car outside a dim cafe. The windshield wipers flicked back and forth, slicing through the night. Nathan slid into the passenger seat, shaking the rain from his hair. Still tense? He asked, flashing that careless grin that had once disarmed her. Tessa kept her eyes on the road. He knows everything. Nathan leaned back, smirking. Then it's time we speed things up. She shot him a look. You don't get it, Nathan. He's not stupid. He's deliberate. The kind of man who doesn't move until he's already 3 steps ahead. Then maybe he deserves what's coming, Nathan said coolly. Tessa's hand tightened on the steering wheel. I didn't sign up for this. I wanted out, not a war. Nathan chuckled. Too late, babe. You can't leave him clean. You gotta make him break first. She turned to him, anger sparking behind her exhaustion. He's still the father of my child. And you think he won't use that against you? The words hit hard. Nathan was right. Adrian would protect Maya at all costs, even if it meant destroying her in the process. Tessa looked away. What's the plan? Nathan leaned closer, voice low. We hit him where it hurts, his reputation. One complaint, one false accusation, and the hospital will fold under pressure. You know how these things go. He'll be too busy defending his career to chase you. Her stomach turned. You want me to ruin him professionally? Do you want your freedom or not? Silence filled the car. The rain eased into a drizzle. Tessa's reflection stared back at her from the window, pale, unsure, tired. Fine, she whispered. But no one touches Maya. Ever. Nathan smiled. Of course not. He lied as easily as he breathed. Back at home, Adrian poured himself a drink. He hadn't slept in days, but fatigue had evolved into focus. Every movement was deliberate, from the files he printed to the small recording device he hid beneath the dining table. He'd learned the hard way that love made people careless. And carelessness was how the truth surfaced. By morning he was gone, hospital rounds, early shift. Tessa watched from the window as his car disappeared down the street. For a brief moment, she almost believed it was normal again. Coffee brewing, the quiet hum of life. But the guilt wouldn't leave. She walked into the kitchen and froze. On the counter sat a note. "I'll be home late. Don't wait up." The handwriting was neat, familiar, except for one detail. The dot above the I in wait was missing. Adrian never missed that. A chill ran through her. It wasn't just a note. It was a test. Her phone buzzed. Nathan again. "You ready?" She hesitated, then grabbed her keys. By evening, she was at the hospital. She wore sunglasses, her hair pulled low in a bun. She slipped into the HR office like a ghost, dropping off an unmarked envelope filled with photos Nathan had staged, fake messages, fabricated timestamps, all painting Adrian as a man who preyed on a nurse. By the time she got home, her hands were shaking. She didn't even notice the small red light blinking beneath the lamp, the one recording every move she made. Hours later, Adrian returned, exhausted. He set his keys down, scanned the room, and smiled faintly. The camera had done its job. The footage uploaded automatically to his drive, time-stamped, watermarked, irrefutable. When he watched the playback, his jaw tightened. There she was, his wife, committing to a lie that could ruin everything he'd built. He didn't feel anger, just confirmation. By morning, the hospital's internal security team contacted him. An anonymous complaint had been filed. Adrian listened calmly as they explained the details, exactly as he expected. "Dr. Blackwell," the administrator said carefully, "it's probably nothing, but protocol requires a temporary review." Adrian nodded. "Of course, I'll cooperate fully." He hung up, turned to the mirror, and almost smiled. Tessa thought she was 3 steps ahead. She was already caught in the web. That evening, he returned home early. The house was quiet, too quiet. Tessa sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, startled. "You're home early." He nodded. "Yeah. Rough day. Everything okay?" He walked closer. "Depends on what you mean by okay." Her eyes darted, unsure if he knew. "I got a call from the hospital," he said casually. "Strange thing. Someone filed a complaint against me." She froze, mask cracking just slightly. "What? That's terrible." "Yeah," he said softly. "Terrible. Especially when the timestamp on the evidence matches the exact time my wife was visiting the HR office." Her breath caught. "You followed me?" He smiled faintly. "Let's just say I upgraded the security system." Her hands trembled. "Adrian." He cut her off. "No need to explain. I already know why you did it." She looked away, tears forming. "I just wanted a way out." "You could have asked for one," he said coldly. "You wouldn't have given it," she shouted. "You'd have dragged this marriage until it killed both of us." He stared at her, really stared, for a long, heavy moment. Then he said quietly, "Maybe. But I would have never left our daughter wondering why her mother vanished." Silence. The rain had started again. Tessa turned away, guilt twisting into something darker. "So what now? You'll play the victim? You'll ruin me?" Adrian picked up his coat. "No, Tessa. I don't need to ruin you. You've already done that yourself." He walked out, leaving her standing there, trembling, the sound of the door echoing like a verdict. But neither of them realized the story wasn't over yet. Because Nathan wasn't done. And his next move would make them both wish they'd never played. Morning came quiet, too quiet. The city outside Adrian's apartment moved on, unaware that everything inside those walls had already collapsed and rebuilt itself in the shadows. He stood at the kitchen counter, pouring coffee, the smell bitter and grounding. Maya slept peacefully in her room, clutching her stuffed rabbit, blissfully unaware of the chaos her parents had just survived. Adrian's phone buzzed. A message. A known number. "You really think you've won, Doc?" "Nathan." Adrian's grip tightened on the cup until it cracked slightly. He'd expected this. Men like Nathan didn't just disappear. They festered, waiting for another chance to strike. He exhaled slowly, placed the cup down, and replied, "You're already done. Walk away while you can." The typing dots appeared, then vanished. Adrian turned toward the window. He'd spent his entire career reading vital signs, spotting anomalies, catching subtle shifts before catastrophe. Nathan was an anomaly, the kind that didn't stop until something snapped. Across town, Tessa sat in a hotel room, the curtains drawn tight. Her reflection in the mirror was unrecognizable, puffy eyes, smeared makeup, the weight of choices she couldn't undo. The silence was suffocating. Every second stretched into an echo of guilt. She'd ruined her marriage. She'd almost lost her child. And Nathan, the man who'd promised her freedom, had vanished the moment things went south. The knock on the door made her jump. Room service. She hesitated, then cracked the door open slightly. No tray. No cart. Just a folded note slid under the frame. Her stomach twisted as she picked it up. One line, scribbled in Nathan's jagged handwriting. Meet me. One last time. Or everything goes public. Her pulse spiked. She didn't have to guess what everything meant. The staged photos. The false reports. The entire digital mess she'd helped create, all of it could blow up and destroy them both. She grabbed her coat and left. Adrian knew something was off by midday. The house was too still. He checked his phone twice. No messages from Tessa. The tracking software he'd quietly left on her phone had gone dark too. He sat at his desk, staring at the feed of his digital dashboard. The GPS pin that had always hovered somewhere near their neighborhood was now gone. Of course, he muttered. She went back to him. He pulled up the surveillance feed from earlier in the morning. Tessa walking down the street, coat pulled tight, phone in hand, disappearing into a cab. Destination, East Harbor. Nathan's territory. Adrian grabbed his keys. East Harbor was an industrial sprawl of half-empty warehouses and rusted cranes, a graveyard for old deals and worse secrets. The air smelled of metal and salt. Tessa's heels clicked nervously as she approached the entrance of a derelict office building. Nathan leaned against the doorway, smirking like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. Took you long enough, he said. I shouldn't have come, she whispered. Yeah, well you did. Guess that means you still care. Her voice cracked. What do you want, Nathan? He shrugged, that lazy grin fading. Let's call it leverage. You see, I've got a folder full of evidence, stuff that links your sweet husband to all kinds of dirty tricks. I sell it to the right people, and poof, Dr. Perfect's career goes up in smoke. You're bluffing, she said, but her voice trembled. Nathan stepped closer. Am I? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a flash drive, twirling it between his fingers. This little thing holds everything. Emails, calls, even your fake report. Oh, and a few extras I added for flavor. Tessa's chest tightened. Why are you doing this? She grinned. Because I can. Because you made me believe you'd start over with me, and instead, you ran scared. So now I get my payday. Tessa swallowed hard, realizing too late the kind of man she trusted. You used me. He smirked. You used yourself. Behind them, a faint sound echoed, the crunch of gravel. Nathan turned, frowning. Adrian stepped out from the shadows, his expression unreadable, his presence cold and commanding. You always talk too much, Nathan. Tessa gasped. Adrian. He didn't look at her. His eyes were fixed on Nathan. Give me the drive. Nathan laughed, holding it up. You think you can scare me, Doc? You're good with scalpels, not street fights. Adrian took a slow step forward. You're right, but I'm better with precision. You'd be amazed how little pressure it takes to cut an artery. Nathan's smirk faltered. You wouldn't. Try me. For a moment, the air itself seemed to freeze. Tessa stepped between them, voice shaking. Stop. Please, this isn't who you are, Adrian. He finally looked at her, his face softening just a fraction. Notice. This is who you made me. Nathan saw his chance. He shoved Tessa aside and bolted toward the door. Adrian lunged, grabbing his arm. The flash drive flew from Nathan's hand, skidding across the floor. They struggled, fists, shoves, grunts echoing off the walls. Nathan swung first, but Adrian ducked, slamming him into a pillar. The man staggered, cursing, and lunged again, but this time Adrian sidestepped, letting momentum do the work. Nathan hit the ground hard. The flash drive lay between them. Adrian picked it up, breathing hard. "You're finished." Nathan laughed weakly, blood on his lip. "Doesn't matter. There's always a copy." Adrian pocketed the drive. "Not anymore." He turned to Tessa, who stood frozen in shock, tears streaking her cheeks. "Go home, miss. Take Maya. Don't look back." Her voice trembled. "And you?" "I'll handle the rest." Sirens blared in the distance. Someone must have called the cops. Nathan groaned on the floor, cursing Adrian's name as the sound grew closer. Tessa hesitated. Then she whispered, "I'm sorry." He didn't answer. He just watched her walk away, the weight of what was lost pressing down heavier than ever. Hours later, Adrian sat in the back of an ambulance, a thin blanket around his shoulders. Nathan was in cuffs, still yelling as officers dragged him toward a cruiser. The flash drive was sealed in an evidence bag, useless now but symbolic. A detective approached. "You're lucky you called us when you did." Adrian nodded absently. He hadn't called them. He didn't need to. His smartwatch had done it automatically, a safety protocol he'd programmed months ago, just in case. "Guess preparations saved your life," the detective added. Adrian gave a tired smile. "Yeah, preparation and knowing when to let go." Weeks passed. The apartment was peaceful again. Maya had returned to her normal, bubbly self, singing to her toys, filling the silence with laughter. Tessa had moved to a relative's house upstate, starting therapy, trying to piece herself together. Adrian didn't hate her anymore. He pitied her, and in a strange way, he forgave her. One evening, as he tucked Maya into bed, she looked up with sleepy eyes. "Daddy." "Yes, sweetheart." "Are we safe now?" He smiled softly. "We are. For good this time." Maya smiled, hugging her rabbit tighter. "Okay." He sat by her side until she drifted to sleep, then stepped out into the quiet hallway. The apartment felt lighter, cleaner, as if the walls themselves had finally exhaled. He walked to his desk, opened his laptop, and deleted the final backup folder labeled Simonendusk. The Wi-Fi that had started everything was gone, for good. He leaned back, sipping his coffee, watching the city lights through the window. For the first time in months, he didn't feel watched. He didn't feel hunted. He just felt free. And as the night settled around him, Adrian Blackwell finally understood. Healing wasn't about forgetting what had happened. It was about surviving it, smarter, colder, and stronger. He closed the laptop. The hum of the city filled the silence. And somewhere deep inside, peace finally logged back in. Thank you for watching. Please hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification for our next story. See you next time. Bye.